Hi, and welcome to A Drummer's Guide to, the podcast all about the things it takes to be a professional musician aside from playing your instrument. My name is Emily Dolan Davies. I have been a drummer since 1999, professional since 2008, and helping others reach their professional goals since 2018, and that's why we're here today. So let's start out with the usual. This is a Patreon shout out to the wonderful Liz Davey. Now, Liz has been around for, feels like a long time now, like years. Me and Liz have sort of like crossed paths a little bit, so I just wanted to say a personal thank you to you. And if anyone else is listening right now and wants to also support this podcast over on the Patreon, you can at patreon.com/Emily Drums. So on with the episode. Today, I would like to talk about essentially the concept, if you like, of the professional musician, but the professional musician that makes a living without viral fame and mega stardom, basically. Because I think we're all kind of sold this dream, if you like, especially nowadays with social media, of like the successful musician, and we see the outliers in terms of like the most successful musicians and the most visible, if you like, and by the nature of them being so visible, they've probably become visible because of various reasons, either, like I say, viral, really famous, all that sort of stuff, and that is kind of the normalized thing, and therefore that is what we all strive for. But actually, between the kind of like, because this is the other thing, I feel like it's a very binary thing. Either it's like broke musician, which is such a trope, but it really, like, that is how people see musicians. You're either broke or you're famous, but there's this massive grey area in between of people that are earning a living in various ways, but they're not as visible, should we say, as the ones that we do see and are normalized, and think that you have to get to that point to actually be successful, if that makes sense. So and also, you know, if you're kind of, I've found this for myself definitely in the past, where if you truly believe that there's a binary option, it's on or it's off, it's ones and zeros, it's either you're broke or you're famous, and that's it, or successful, or put whatever word you want in there, but that kind of extreme where you're known around the world, there's you're viral, that sort of thing. And as I say, I think this is very relevant to modern generations, obviously, but I remember distinctly, and I've spoken about this multiple times, because it was a real, like, what's the right word? It was a reality check. Was it painful? Yeah, I think it was. But at the same time, it kind of made me realise how possible it was to be a professional musician. And this was when I went to see a drummer in a drum clinic, Mark Mondesi, or Mondesir. I never know how to say his name, and I've known Mike for a long time. But anyway, so I went to see this drama clinic. I was 14 years old, and when I tell you, Mike was literally the encapsulation of what I was trying to do, what my dreams were at the time. I think he was playing with Jeff Beck, he was touring the world, all this sort of stuff, and I just looked up to him. Like, I mean, I looked up to so many drummers, obviously, but he was right there in front of me, and I was just so, like, in awe, enamored, not just with his playing, but by his career, you know. And I was like, yeah, like, that's what I want to do. That's who I want to be. I want to be doing what Mark's doing. And then literally the following weekend, like, you know, I really kind of, what's the word, like, hung on his every word, everything that he was saying about his experience of touring and doing all that. I even asked him, I think afterwards, because I was too scared to ask him in the clinic because there were so many people. I kind of asked him about what he would suggest, and he gave me some great advice. He was so sweet, still so sweet. And yeah, we sort of left it at that, and I was like, you know, yeah, that's the one. And then the following weekend, I mean, the timing couldn't have been more perfect. I was out in central London with my family. We were walking around, and there was a sort of makeshift kind of venue. It was a restaurant, actually, and we could hear a live band playing, and I looked through the window of this place, and lo and behold, there was Mark Mondesir playing a function gig. And it was like like I said, it was such an interesting moment. It was like my reality had been like what I believed was reality to be shattered. And part of me was a little heartbroken, I think. And I kind of, in that moment, being 14, having zero experience, not really understanding what it meant to be a professional musician, I was a bit like, he's doing, oh, that's a shame. It was kind of that thing of like, oh, he has to do function gigs or something like that. Really, like I say, ignorant ways of thinking. And yeah, it was just this little insight into, oh, that's the reality. And then obviously as my career went on, it just became more apparent that the diversity of earning a living is so broad. The opportunities are so broad. And although, I suppose back in the day, there were kind of, there still are world famous drummers. You look at Steve Gadd, for instance, right? Long before social media and all that. So he is a legendary drummer. But to think that in order to be successful, you have to get to those heights is... Oh. Apologies for that. Nice delivery. Of course it was going to come when I was filming. Could have come at any time, of course, but no, it decided right now. Okay, coffee. So, going back to Steve Gadd. He's a legendary drummer, and he just, you look up to that and you think, that's what I want to do, and that is the goal, and that is the answer, if you like. That is how you are a successful drummer, if that makes sense. But actually, that is only one way to be a successful drummer and successful musician. Obviously, I'm going to talk mainly in terms of drummers because I'm a drummer, so that is where I can relate. Like, it's just, I remember those feelings of like, oh my gosh, you can only be successful if X, Y, Z. And I know that in like the younger generations now, and I say younger generations, it's probably from around about my generation, I'd imagine. You'd ask kids, what do they want to be when they grow up? And they'd say famous. And I struggle with that massively. Like, it makes me feel incredibly uncomfortable. I can't quite understand it. But let me tell you, if you're looking to be a professional musician that is famous, that is an incredibly slim chance. And also, even then, it's such a broad concept because you can be famous within, like, say you're a drummer, you can be famous within drummers, but then in the wider context of the world, you're not famous at all. You can be famous within the rock community, but not, in a wider sense. Again, there's kind of levels with that. I personally would not strive for that, but that is just my personal preference because the idea of fame scares the bejesus out of me. This is going to sound so ironic, and I apologize because you're like, Emily, you're recording a podcast and you have been for years now. I love anonymity. I love this is why I love London. This is why I mean, I grew up here anyway, but I love walking around and nobody even taking a blind bit of notice of you and just nobody caring. I find it so liberating and just, you can just sail through and just do whatever and just be, So anyway, so for me, fame, very scary. So that's never been my thing. But for me, it's always been about earning a living. That's it. From when I was very young, it was like, I just want to earn enough to be able to live and to keep doing this. So roof over my head, food in my fridge. That was kind of the goal. And that's always what I worked towards. But with that became like anything around earning money and playing music, at least in the environment I grew up in, with the other musicians that I grew up alongside. The idea of talking about money and music, there was certainly an element of shame that came with that. Like, if you're being paid for your art, it doesn't make it art. If you're doing covers gigs, it doesn't make you valid. All these sorts of things. If you're not playing with originals artists, that means that you're not successful. I thought that for a while. I quickly got over it. Like I say, Mark helped me with that when I witnessed that, and I was like, oh, okay, I need to shift my idea of what success looks like. But even then, a lot of that kind of success came from outside interpretation, I suppose. It's sort of to be seen to be playing, to be seen to be on tour, to be seen to be XYZ in the studio, all that sort of stuff. And a lot of my early career, definitely that factored into it massively, because to me, as long as I was playing drums, I was happy. And that's how I felt when I sort of was starting out. That was my idea of success, was sort of getting away with it for another month. But, you know, it's not the best attitude to bring to things, only from a self-esteem standpoint. But again, there was this element of like guilt that I was earning a living from doing what I love. To a degree, I still have that. Not so much with playing, but, you know, I have a lot of friends who have day jobs and stuff like that. They're not necessarily in the creative arts. Maybe they're in sports, maybe they're in other stuff. And I still feel an element of guilt that I don't have to get up for a 9-to-5 job every day. Don't get me wrong, I'm even now, even as I say this, I'm like, even now I'm qualifying my existence right now. But, you know, I work in very hard, but in my own kind of way, and I still don't feel like that's valid sometimes. So I still struggle with this massively. What I will say is that I do feel like I'm successful, and it's not necessarily about money in the bank, as it were. It's more about lifestyle and the ability to have flexibility with what I want to do. I get to work with really interesting people. I get to be creative in various ways. So therefore, that's kind of like success to me. But I do know that it's kind of, I still have that mentality. I still have it where, you know, I'm in a position now where I can kind of have a fairly stable-ish, like making a fairly stable-ish living. Even now, I don't feel comfortable saying that, because I still have that mindset of feast or famine. You know, I remember the months where I couldn't afford rent and all that sort of stuff, and I was eating literally rice and frozen vegetables, and that was it, with a little bit of soy sauce for taste. That was what I was living on. You know, I was spending £13 a week on groceries because I couldn't afford anything more. But the point is that I still was getting to do what I wanted to do. So don't get me wrong, I was getting sick from that. Oh my gosh, it was not a good time. But it afforded me to be able to carry on. And I still have that mentality where I still feel like at any moment everything can be taken away from me. And I've always had that. It's why I try to live as frugally as I can, while saving money for the times when it is rougher. And these rough times, they still come about. Like, that is the nature of being self-employed. I think you can minimize it in terms of diversifying what you're doing, for sure, of course. But I think there needs to be an element of, I guess, planning for your future self, because there's going to be discomfort there. It's going to happen. But this is just my beliefs. I might be wrong, and please, I hope you have a healthier way to think about this. But to me, it's like I need to expect that it's going to happen at some point, and I just need to be prepared for when that happens so that I can carry on. So that's kind of how I see it. But what I will say is that what comes with that is certainly this, there's a slight emotional cost, mental cost of, this feast or famine kind of thing, where sometimes, and I find this with a lot of musicians around me as well, you know that saying, make hay whilst the sun shines? It's very much that. But what happens is, if you find yourself in a, not a consistent state of making hay, but like lots of opportunities, one thing after another, after another, you say yes because you're so scared of saying no in case it all disappears, but you end up then completely wrecking yourself and burning yourself out and having to stop anyway. So it's kind of balancing that fear of, if I say no and then suddenly the famine is back and I could have, like what could have been, I could have earned money so that I would be safe for another few months or whatever else. And that's kind of what it comes down to. But it's tough. I don't have the answers to that. Like, definitely not. The only way, like I say, that I've found is kind of trying to be a few months ahead in terms of savings, and then just working on that sort of presumption. Keep going. But it's definitely a different way of thinking. And if you're coming from a job with a stable salary into this world, it's jarring, I'd imagine. I say I'd imagine because I've never done it. I've done it from the other way up. So I've had like little part-time jobs here and there, like drum shop and stuff like that, babysitting back in the day. But in terms of like my living, I've always, like I said, I've done it from the bottom side up. So I've always just had no money and sort of worked to get just enough to survive, sort of thing. So I can't really speak on that too much, but it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. So much, yeah, there's so much to it. But like I say, it is possible, and I think that chasing that fame side of things, or viral moments, or that you have to be massive to and well known to make a living, I think it's such a myth. And like I say, the majority of musicians that I know that are working, you've never heard of. Some of the world's best musicians you've barely heard of, but they're working all the time and they're just doing their thing, and they're doing that in the way that they want. And yet they might be well known within their circles, but that's it. Like, their circle is small comparatively to, the world, the internet, the interweb. But it is possible. So I think that rather than striving for those kind of big, famous, shoes to fill, if you like, it should be more about creating a sustainable career. And in a way, just if you think about this world at the moment, especially where social media, fame, virality, all of that is kind of the goal for everyone. Everyone's creating, clickbaity moments, extreme opinions. There's loads of echoes chambers going on. And again, this binary thing, it's either you're at one end of the scale or the other. But actually, there's this massive bit in between that it makes it sustainable. And by being in that in between, I think that's almost like a rebellion in itself. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but accepting, and maybe not accepting, but exploring the grey in between and asking questions, but out of intrigue, if you know what I mean. I find that is an interesting place to be, rather than the extremes. The extremes it's easy to be extreme. It's easy to have definitive views and beliefs about what a career should look like, And again, like I say, it could be that in order to be a viable musician, you have to be broke all the time. That might be a belief that you have. That's going to hold you back, let me tell you. I know that for sure. But then you do have to deal with the guilt of if you are earning money. Also, there's the thing of if you're earning a living, but those around you aren't. Like other musicians aren't. I can't tell you how many musicians I know that I've worked with, artists who are fantastic, and they never quite broke through. And yet I'm still going. I'm still here and they're not. And I struggle with that for sure. So I think it's worth sort of being aware of that for sure. In terms of sort of steps, if you like, of creating a viable career, I think rather than looking at, like I say, because, okay, I speak to a lot of people, right, where they are obsessed with metrics. And by that, I mean followers on their Instagram or their TikTok or whatever. And they ask me, how do I get more followers? And I'm like, yeah, but why? Why are we getting more followers? What is the purpose? What is the career that you're trying to build? If you're trying to build a career, if you're trying to be successful, what is success? Because you could have 100,000 followers on your page as a musician, right? I'm going to use myself as an example, right? Although this is going to be a rubbish example, so have fun with this. Right, imagine that I am a drummer who enjoys, that wants a following, right? I've just decided, right, I want 100,000 followers. Personally, I know that in order to up those numbers, I could get a little bit fitter, get my stomach like proper flat stomach and stuff like that. I could throw a bikini on, or be scantily clad. I could play. I could also do shots of, I could play barefoot and do shots of my feet playing barefoot on the pedals. And I know that I would be able to up my following, right? I know that. But the followers that are then going to be following Are they going to be people that are going to want one-to-one coaching for their career? Doubtful, very doubtful. Therefore, what does it mean? It means nothing. Like, the number of followers, really, honestly, I know it's probably like easy to say, it really means nothing if they're not the right kind of follower, if they're the wrong one that is not going to further your idea of success that you're striving for. So I think that, you know, defining that first is so essential. You can still build your following off of that. You can do ads on Instagram, for instance, highly targeted. I do briefly talk about this. I have briefly spoken about this. But if you don't know what that person is, that ideal person that you want to reach out for drum tracks or to go on the road with or go and jam with or whatever else, or coach in my case, or teach if you're teaching, well, yeah, it's wasted money. It's literally wasted money. And yeah, it might look nice having a nice metric. Oh, look, I have 100,000 followers. Kudos to me. I'm so cool. Okay, that's fine. But why? Why? The number needs to mean something, if that makes sense. So I think with that in mind, sort of talking about this grey area in between, rather than focusing on the numbers and the outward thing of like, how does it look? A viral moment. Oh, how cool. Everyone, not everyone, loads of people saw that. Or super famous. Wow, look, they're super famous to lots of people. But let me tell you as well, right? The reality is that some people, not all, but some people that I certainly know, have worked with, all of that, who are famous, who are quote unquote successful on the outside, some incredibly well-known people are well, there's two things. Not either, there's many things, but the two that I'm choosing to focus on right now is they are sometimes deeply unhappy, deeply unfulfilled, resentful of their career, resentful of their fans, and everything that they have to do when they go on tour, when they're in the studio, when they have to make music. Resentful is the word. Unhappy, unfulfilled. More than one that I've come across. Either that or, and this is crazy to me because I still don't understand this, they're broke. They literally can't afford to live. And sometimes that's why they have to keep touring, because they have so many overheads. And I do find this, or I have noticed this at least, with like cross generations in terms of musicians that have been in this industry for a long time, when the whole model of the music industry, what being a session musician means, what being an artist means, the whole landscape has shifted so dramatically, but they're still living in a way as when things were, let's say, good back in the day. I mean, that's a very subjective term, and I don't mean it in the sense that it's not good now, because it's just different. But they're living a lifestyle from 20, 30, 40 years ago, but in the modern day where it's not sustainable in the right way if you haven't moved with the times, if that makes sense. I don't know whether that makes sense, and I'm sorry that I have to be a little vague on that, but it's so fascinating to me. So to the outside, they would seem successful still, famous even, and they may even have viral moments too, but from the inside you can see, there's a lot going on there. There's a lot going on there. But equally, there's people that I know, like I say, you will never have heard of them probably, but they're working constantly. They are working with people that they enjoy working with. Don't get me wrong, there are still moments of stress and, you know, hardship and all of that, but on the whole, they're fulfilled. And they're earning a living consistently, and they're able to sustain themselves. So I feel like that is probably a better thing to focus on, maybe. And to me, in my eyes, the only way to do that, and again, this is my opinion, this is my experience, is just diversifying everything that you can in what you do. So whether that is, like say, in terms of like playing, that could be touring, that can be recording, that can be doing function gigs, that can be doing originals artist stuff, it can be new artists, established artists, it could be, if you're a drummer, it can be acoustic drums, it can be electronic drums, it can be percussion. If you do backing vocals, add that to your CV too, like just diversifying what you do. But then outside of that, then you can also look at teaching, for instance. Great way to kind of like just keep up when you're home, to keep up your income. You know what I mean? It's all about balance. And to be honest, that's what I'm going for at the moment, balance. And I recognize that I am in a very privileged position to even think about having any type of balance in my life, because it's something that I've never had, never ever, up until the last few years. It was work, 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 work. That was the focus always, 100% of the time, or let's say 90% of the time. There were, of course, life, you know. But now it's different. I was going to swear, it's really uncomfortable. Really, I'm finding it very interesting and uncomfortable, but very fulfilling, and it feels healthier. It definitely feels healthier. So like I said, I've still got my, not strange ways of thinking, but my ways, let's just say ways of thinking, in terms of that, being afraid that everything will disappear all at once. So I do have that fear that travels with me, and I do make decisions to try and make myself as comfortable as possible in the discomfort. But in fairness, for me, and if you've listened to my podcast for any amount of time, one of the big fears that I had would be losing my studio, which actually happened. And let me tell you, the world didn't end. And actually, I found it incredibly freeing. It kind of freed me up to choose more, which is unexpected, to say the least. And actually now, where I find myself with doing my coaching, studying my psychology and counselling degree, I find myself even more, I don't know, with more choice and more fulfilled. And like, I can't tell you, right? So I'm recording this on a Tuesday, right? On Mondays, I check in with my students just to be like, hey, how's your week been? Tell me some wins, tell me some goals for the following week. When I tell you this week, the wins that have been happening with my students, oh my God, I literally was running around my living room yesterday. I was so happy, and so like happy for them, proud of them, like just, it was just one of those, it's been a fantastic week actually overall for all my students. They've all sort of like been stepping up and just doing the thing and getting outside their comfort zone and all that sort of stuff. And I love it. I love it. It's so fulfilling to be able to help people and use my experience to like help guide other people, or just share with them what, you know, has happened to me, and hopefully they can make some sort of informed decision off the back of that. But it's so good. And I honestly, I don't think I would have lent into this as much if I hadn't have shut down the studio, or had to shut down the studio, I should say. So yeah, I think just diversifying is a really good way to sort of like combat that. But I think overall, the one thing that, if you could take only one thing from this, I would say maybe have a look at what you're defining as success right now. And maybe just give yourself the grace and the space to redefine what success could mean to you in terms of what you're willing to do. Because, as I say, for me, I had a very narrow view of what success was for me. And to put it very succinctly, it was playing drum kit, acoustic drum kit, on tour with a really famous artist so that people could see that I was playing with a famous artist. But as soon as I started sort of like stepping back from that and widening the scope, that's when interesting things started happening. That's when interesting opportunities happened. I started to say yes more, and then I ended up in mad situations I never would have expected. And it has led to a career that, you know, it has sustained me for a couple of decades essentially. And I think that's okay. I think that's pretty good. I'm pretty proud of myself, I'm not going to lie. And long may it continue in whatever direction I choose to take it in as well. And this sort of comes back down to identity and stuff like that, which I've spoken on fairly recently. So you can go look that up if you're interested in kind of identifying as a drummer and just the importance of that, or the gravitas of that and the dangers and the pitfalls of that, because I've certainly fallen foul to it, but currently trying to re-identify myself as just Emily. But anyway, right, I'm going to stop because I'm getting slightly mad, I feel. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I hope this helped you in some way. If it has, please do feel free to like, share and subscribe if you want to see future episodes. If you would like to suggest a topic for an episode, then go over to emilydrums.com/AMA. If you would like to follow me on Instagram, you can go to @HeyEmilyDrums. And if you would like to get involved with some one-on-one coaching, you can go to emilydrums.com. And finally, if you'd like to support this podcast on Patreon, you can at patreon.com/EmilyDrums. That is it. That is all the links. That's a lot of links. Anyway, I hope you're having a lovely day wherever you are, whatever you're up to. It is warm here. I've had to close the windows to record this. I'm sweating. I'm going to have to open it up again. Anyway, I shall see you next time for another subject, and sending you lots of love. All right, bye.